Good evening. Okay, it's the time of the year I get to give my speech, and it's very long, and there's so many people here who are going to have to listen to it. This is great. Okay, now I used to rely on this speech being at about 8:30, it's now 7:30, when people had a little bit more to drink, so forgive me if it's less funny than it used to be. Anyway, we are 5. The Frontline Club is 5 years old. It was far from certain that we would get here, and I'd like to show you some pictures of the planning stage, which I remember. It has grown a bit, and it's made more solidly than it was then. And would like to observe that not everybody thought it would work when presented with the idea. Some were rather skeptical. But we now have 1,100 fully paid up members. Whoa. And there are some with some subscription problems. So the number could be a little bit more, and we're going to, we hope the people can sort those. We have done, in this room, 1,000 events in those 5 years. We've supported a program in Russia that bears our name, and we're collaborating on one in Afghanistan. We've done events all over the world, well, in about sort of 12 countries, but I won't list them. But I would like to take this opportunity to say that we would not be here tonight if it wasn't for my wife, Pranvera, whom I love very much. I am certain that I would have mucked it all up. For the first couple of years, we were so pushed for money that we rented out our flat in London. We had a camp bed on little wheels that we used. It was a single camp bed. We used to push it up and down the street outside between the two buildings we own, finding a room, an office that we could sleep in that wasn't nobody was going to come in early the next day or something like that. And we put on top of it a suitcase which had her clothes, and I didn't have a suitcase, but that's another story. I was a soldier. And the bed had slats, little wooden slats, and we found, since it was a single bed, that with 2 people in it, if one person sat up, you would both fall down. And I'm a restless sleeper, and I did sit up quite often, so I used to forget that. So it must have been love, I think, to carry your clothes up and down the street in a suitcase, having rented out your flat. But it's the future that I most want to talk about. Times are hard, we all hear about that too much. But we are determined over the next 5 years to make the next 5 years greater than the last. We are also determined to out-survive the porno shop out opposite, whose trade does not seem to be reduced by the crunch. We're going to do what we do even better. We're going to deliver better service and better value to you and to journalism. I want to welcome our new general manager, Nicola Wilkerson. She is new and I've got to get it right. Is she around? Anyway, she's here somewhere and you'll see her. She's got a red top. With our assistant managers, Marco, Salim and Aurora, I'm confident that you're going to find our prices get keener and our services get better than ever. We're going to reopen for Saturdays and hopefully Sundays later, but for Saturday evenings we're going to reopen next week. But I want to talk about something that excites me a lot. Hopefully it excites you, but we are now delivering 90% of our food from our own farm. Or we buy it in from neighbours who meet our exacting standards. Picture, own farm. On cue. So we are not only exploiting our children to support you, who are now digging fruit trees for you. We are bringing Norfolk to Norfolk Place. And with our... Yeah, I thought that was good. With our extraordinary wine list, that I'd like to thank Malcolm Gluck for, who's in the room, he's just there, and it is an extraordinary wine list. We believe that we are unique with this food from our farm and with this extraordinary wine list of wines that are selected for all sorts of good reasons. I'd like to thank John Taylor, Much of the credit for what we're doing on the farm must go to John Taylor, who's our head chef. And we love seeing him in the club. He's over there. There he is. We love seeing him up here. And we love his new menu. I hope you all try it soon if you haven't. Now, an increasing number of people in Norfolk get meat and vegetables from us. We deliver weekly hampers, which includes Malcolm's wine. This is something that we could provide our members if there was enough interest. So I don't want to miss this opportunity to canvass interest. So hands up for hampers. Yeah, you will have to pay something, but it'll be less than expensive. Okay, so limited interest in hampers, but let us know if you are interested, if you go back and realise that the food you're buying isn't good enough. As I said, we've done 1,000 events in 5 years, and to run them, we've received the support of the Open Society Institute. I think we're all very grateful. Well, I certainly am for that support, which has enabled us to build the great programme that we run. But this subsidy has come to an end, and we have been unable to replace it. We still receive support from the Open Society, but for our overseas projects, which we are able to fund much more easily through donors. But it is hard to convince donors that a programme of events in London should be funded by somebody else. We are going to continue, of course, but we'll have to increase our event pricing, seek some corporate sponsorship, and introduce some events that people will be happy to pay more for to come to. We're going to introduce an associate membership for our event regulars and networking events for everybody. We're also going to charge members an amount if they fail to turn up to events that they've booked for. I don't like charging members more, but I would like to point out that if you book a place and don't come to it, we lose the opportunity to charge it to somebody else. So we would appreciate that if you would do that. And I've lost my place, and I'm going to try and find it. Yes. Now, Pranver and I are going to continue to forego any wage for our work for the club for the 6th year because the show must go on. We are in our 2nd year on training. We think it's an excellent opportunity for members to supplement income as trainers. So if you have that desire to teach, then teach for us. Membership. Most of you are still paying. This is the boring bit. I'm sorry, but it is my job, and I only get 1 year to, once a year to speak to you about this stuff. But most of our members are still paying by standing orders, and we also have a direct debit facility, which is much easier for us to get your money. And so we would appreciate if you were able to convert to direct debit. It does make administration easier, and we're having to make sure that we can do that. Website. We have got the coolest new website coming in on about a week, and that's just the front page. It's really exciting, and it's got the coolest stuff on it that I'm hoping you will all find very useful, and I won't go into it more because otherwise you might, you can, go on it in soon, hopefully. Our newsletter. We've taken, you would have noticed, 6 months off on our newsletter, but we're going to relaunch it in the first quarter of next year. It's going to have a much clearer focus, and we think you're going to love it. Writing for it is going to be a great opportunity for members to get some free nosh, so please continue to do so. And we're very grateful for those of you who have. But as I say, we're going to do something much more interesting, and I hope you'll support it. To lighten up my boring speech, I want to show you something that I've been working on with a cameraman called Richard Parry, who was with me at Frontline News all those years ago. It was a struggle to do, and we covered it. We followed a journalist for 15 years. We tried to get some Bigfoots to film, but they didn't seem to want to be filmed by us, strangely. But this chap was okay with it, so I'd just like to kind of show you a couple of minutes of video.
Why am I here? What's my purpose in life? Am I risking my life for no apparent reason?
Robert, I think you're quite safe.
I'm on a mystic trip of being a messenger for world problems.
I'm not sure you have the aura. Or aura of love.
Am I ever going to get a break? Am I ever going to be able to establish myself?
So Jocelyn sacked me.
When will that happen? Who knows? What do I have to do it? I have no clue.
I can't read auras.
Am I going insane?
I knew something was going to happen in Grozny. And I stayed in there and I made some great pictures.
Journalism was a rehab from hell. You know, go to a war, go to a bar, get laid.
Then shit just started going chaotic. The editor was like, here, take some acid, dude. Let's have a good time. Post-traumatic stress syndrome on acid. This is Pulitzer material. I love the smell of burning shit.
You know, cynical, here's how I'm cynical. How many nameless dead bodies have I stepped over?
We're looking for some other people to film, so if there's any other journalists who fancy on behalf of all of us, of all the members, it's starting again. Oh. On behalf of all the members, I would like to do, this is the thank you bit, I'd like to give a heartfelt thanks to John Owen. Our events program is inspired by him and has been guided by him throughout. I'd like to also mention the events crew who work, who I must say I think the program is great, and it's a lot of hard work for a small number of people. There's Duncan Fury, Deborah, and Phil. JJ always gets the greatest clap. He'll hear the clap. He'll hear the clap. Our sous chef Colin and the chefs who work really hard for us. Jane, who's behind that wall, makes all the technology work. I'd like to thank her too. I'd also like to thank all our staff who work to make us comfortable here. I'd like to say that it's a privilege to be served by you, and we admire your professionalism and we appreciate it. I'd like to thank the club members. We're very grateful for your support when you use the club and restaurant. And please continue to help by doing so, but also please bring us some new members. And of course, we're looking for intelligent, good-looking, interesting people like us. Now, what you're going to do, we've had the Frontline Club Awards now for this is our second year, and I'd like to thank Canon who supported it this year. I'd like to thank them, as you can see their logos here, and we haven't had logos before, so it's quite different for us, except ours there, which is changing. That's a different subject. The criteria. What we're trying to do is we want to focus on integrity, courage, and the independence of spirit. Regardless of the nationality or media discipline, as a phone going, and include the work of freelancers. And anybody else that the judges feel they'd like to recognise. So it's a pretty broad criteria, and one that I think is necessary, and that fits well in the awards that I see out there. I wanted to create a journalism award that was different. So the judges are leading practitioners, and I think that's special. There's only leading practitioners. We have a criteria broad enough to include people who don't usually get the recognition that they deserve. No finalists either. I mean, I hate, well, it doesn't happen very often, I admit, but I hate being a finalist not winning. And so nobody is coming here for an award having not won anything. We only have winners. So again, thank you, Canon, and I hope the support's going to expand so that we can grow this award, so one day soon, having your name carved on the wall of the Frontline Club is the most desirable accolade in the international news industry. It's about 4 more pages. Nah, it's not. I'm going to hand over now. I'm going to hand over to Alan. Alan is somebody who I have always looked up to from when I was a sort of fringe freelancer. He is, of course, elite, being a judge on the awards. And he's now going to run the show from now on, and I thank him for it.
Thanks for it. Briefly a word. When Vaughan and Pranvera first came over to my house in Islington a few years ago and said they had this idea to set up a club, and we went out for the evening and they described their vision. And I said at the end of it, well, it sounds like you want to create a clearing in the forest where there will be a campfire around which our tribe can gather and reflect and celebrate. And if it works, we will one day wonder how we ever got by without it. And I think now, 5 years on, both of those things have come true. And one other thing, this building is also a repository of a certain set of values. The values that underpin this Frontline Award. And when I know that of all the people I've worked with over the last 20 years, when you think about integrity, courage and independence of spirit, I don't think there are many people I've worked with and known in the field who embody those values as fully as Vaughan and Pranvera. So we're in their debt. I get an opportunity once in a while to say this. Please give it up for Vaughan and Pranvera. Now I go back to my script. Vaughan's already talked about the awards. I'll tell you who the judges are. John Lee Anderson, Jeremy Bowen, Patrick Coburn, Carlotta Gall, Gary Knight, Christina Lamb, Alan Little, that's me, Anthony Lloyd, Seamus Murphy, Vaughan Smith and John Swain. We don't invite people to apply for this award. We don't invite companies to put their people for it. We just sit down and brainstorm and come up with some ideas from amongst ourselves. Next year, we'd like to encourage you to offer us some names and explain why you think people should be recognised in this way. So it's my great privilege now to introduce the 2008 winner, the first of the two winners, Yuri Kozyrev. He's not here. He's been working in Baghdad in Iraq for the last 5 years. Think about that. 5 years. Since 2003 in Iraq. He's there tonight. Some of his photographs you can see here. Let me tell you what the judges said. This was a summary of what the judges said, written by Gary Knight, himself a photographer, as you know. The judges felt that no one had photographed this war with greater deliberation or purpose than he, and no one who did it as well. Kozyrev made a Herculean effort to be honest and have faith in the purest tenets of photojournalism in war. That is, to tell the stories of others irrespective of the risk, to do so fluent in the language of photography and with an understanding of all the nuances and mysteries of war, and crucially to do so with integrity. Kozyrev accomplished all this without shouting his own name as loudly as he could, as so many in our profession choose to do. Very few in this business remain so stubborn, humble and modest. He's a great example to everyone in this room and beyond. I'd like to invite Times picture editor Mike Beeling onto the stage now to say a little bit more about Yuri. Mike.
Thank you. I'm not as good as him at this, so bear with me. It goes without saying I'm very proud to accept this award on Yuri's behalf. Yuri has served us so well at Time magazine over many, many years. And it's really very pleasing for me personally and for the company I work for to see now he's here and now recognised as one of the great war photographers. As Alan has just mentioned, he is also incredibly humble and self-effacing man. It's impossible not to like Yuri. Anybody here in the room who's met him, he's just a lovely guy. From my point of view, he's a real joy to work with. He's a model professional. When you call Yuri, when something kicks off and the bomb goes off, you call Yuri in the attempt to get him to get out the door and cover it, and Yuri is already out the door. He doesn't wait for me. He doesn't wait for my colleagues to ring him. He just goes because he knows what's important to our readers, and what's important for Yuri as a photographer to cover. I found out this when the trouble in South Ossetia was happening this summer, I think. Yuri was home, having a well-earned break, going to see his family. And within hours of him getting home, seeing his wife for the first time, because he'd been on such a long and grueling assignment for Time in Baghdad, he just picked up his cameras and went, because he knew how important that story was. The same happened a few years ago at the Beslan school massacre. Again, he was on break with his family. He just went. He goes with that question. He goes with that complaint. As a picture editor, again, he's not one of those guys that rings you every 10 minutes and moans about stuff or complains about stuff, he just goes. You don't hear from Yuri for hours, maybe days, and then suddenly, just a shed load of fantastic pictures turn up. Especially all I've got to say about Yuri, although I asked his good friend and colleague Bobby Ghosh, who's our man in Baghdad, who's with him now, if he'd like to say anything, and he wrote this. Yuri's greatest quality, I think, is that he can be perfectly anonymous, to the point of being invisible. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something about his body language that makes him blend into the background, allowing people to forget he's even there. This was vividly illustrated last Saturday when we went to Ramadi to attend a great gathering of tribal sheiks. As the only foreigner, you'd expect Yuri to attract a lot of attention, even to make these deeply conservative and often xenophobic people very uncomfortable. Not a bit of it. The sheiks didn't even notice him, and it meant he was able to take some amazingly candid pictures. He may be the world's greatest war photographer, but Yuri is no gung-ho adrenaline junkie. Having covered so many conflicts, Afghanistan, Yugoslavia, Chechnya, Iraq, he's philosophical about war. He's taken some breathtaking battle shots, but his main interest lies in what war does to people, ordinary people. He's always been more interested in the social, cultural, and human aspects of Iraq than in the military element of the war and the occupation. So here's to Yuri, a great photographer, a great human being, and again, very proud to accept this on his behalf. Thanks very much.
I'd like to ask Anna Ghosh, who's the PR manager for Canon Consumer Imaging, to make the award on behalf of Canon.
Thank you. Canon UK is very proud to be part of the awards here this evening with the Frontline Club, and long may it continue as well. I think the photographs speak for themselves, and we would like to congratulate Yuri on his achievement this evening and present him with a new EOS 5D Mark II as part of his prize.
He's never going to get it.
And his certificate as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. The second of these two winners tonight can't be named because of safety. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're now going to hear from Yuri.
We send it in little bits, though, so we then put it together. It might look straight, but he's there.
Hello, I'm Yuri Kozyrev, photographer for Time magazine here in Baghdad. It's a pleasure, it's a big honor to get the second annual Frontline Award. I know I have been selected by a group of foreign correspondents. Most of them have been here in Iraq, and I'm sure they know how complicated to cover the war in Iraq. But I found that it's a very unique experience for myself. I've been here for 6 years, covering the war on both sides, on the Iraqi side and the military side. I wish I could be in London, but I'm here in Baghdad, in Iraq, working on several stories. Canon, thank you very much for sponsoring Photojournalist with new equipment. It's very important for us, and especially in a place like in Iraq. And thank you, all of you.
The second winner cannot be named because of safety concerns. The judges wanted to recognize the winner's excellent contribution, largely behind the scenes and often in difficult circumstances, to consistently cover the story in Zimbabwe, especially over the past year. I'd like to invite my boss, my friend, John Williams, who's the BBC World Editor, to talk about this prize winner. John.
Thank you, Alan. Well, tonight we salute an individual who's shown extraordinary courage and commitment to telling one of the world's defining stories. This person has worked for the BBC for the best part of a decade, helping us, as Alan says, report from a country in which the BBC is banned, and that country is Zimbabwe. For the past 8 years, the BBC has managed to report from inside Zimbabwe despite that ban, charting the country's decline into economic and political meltdown. This year, we've made close to a dozen trips to Zimbabwe. John Simpson, George Alagaya, Orla Guerin, Peter Biles, Karen Allen and Ian Pannell have helped bring the story of Zimbabwe to the UK and to the world. And they've only been able to do so because of the extraordinary contribution of our award winner. A remarkable and brave journalist, someone known, I'm sure, to many of you, but who, as Alan has explained, for her own safety, must remain anonymous in public. 3.5 years ago, our recipient mourned the death of a friend shot dead in Somalia. That friend was Kate Payton. Tonight, I thank my colleague in Zimbabwe, and I remember Kate, a life cut short all too soon. Another brave and courageous journalist who died telling the story of Africa, and a story that our winner tonight helps us bring to a global audience. Thank you very much indeed.
Anna, would you like to make the presentation to John? Thank you. Thank you very much. There is a special commendation to add to those two prize winners, and that goes to Arkady Babchenko. Let me read briefly what the judges said about Arkady, and we will see some of Arkady's photographs on the screen here. The journalist and author Arkady Babchenko wins the Special Commendation for his outstanding coverage of the war in South Ossetia and Georgia, where he showed extraordinary courage and initiative. His photographs form one of the most significant visual documents of the war. Vaughan, I want to come and ask you to say a word or two about Arkady. Why is Arkady receiving this commendation?
Yeah, no, it's really cool. What Arkady did, he was once a Russian soldier, and then he got a job with Novaya Gazeta. Thank you. Which is Anna Politkovskaya's newspaper, that's where she came from. And what he did for this war is he pretended to be a Russian militiaman and took his camera and in disguise filmed the whole Russian move in. And it was an extraordinary thing. And so we thought he deserved recognition because, I don't know, it rang my bell anyway.
Yeah, some of you might not know that Vaughan's also tried that trick in 1991. During the first Gulf War, he dressed up as a British soldier. And as a result of doing that, he got to places where nobody else had got and got some of the most striking images of the first Gulf War, the early days of it. Anyway, please, your appreciation for Arkady Babchenko. Tonight is also about fundraising, by the way, for the Frontline Fixers Funds. We've all worked with fixers. We've depended upon them. We know how important they are. Some of you are probably here tonight because a fixer somewhere along the way saved your life through a combination of wisdom, quick thinking and local knowledge. The Frontline Fixers Fund, we will see, I think, a little clip coming now.
What we do, the business of reporting the world, would not be possible without men and women like Ajmal Naqshbandi. Ajmal was a fixer working for the Italian newspaper La Repubblica in Afghanistan. In March 2007, he, his correspondent and their driver, Syed Aga, were abducted by the Taliban in Helmand. Syed was murdered immediately, beheaded by his captors. Their Italian colleague, Daniele Mastrogiacomo, was released, exchanged for 5 Taliban prisoners. Ajmal was murdered shortly afterwards. He was 24 years old. It is in memory of him that Frontline established the Fixers Fund to help the families of those killed or injured while working with us. For without them, without their knowledge, their wisdom, their extraordinary courage, what we do would not be possible.
I knew Ajmal. I met him a few times in Kabul. He was a young, enthusiastic journalist. He wanted to learn as a fixer so he can go to the next phase of actually being a journalist. I think this should be a lesson for all media organization when it comes to treating fixers on the ground. They shouldn't be just for Christmas.
It's very important that people understand that news reporting is a team game, and especially in television, which I've spent most of my time doing. It's not just, I mean, clearly the guy who's going to be on TV gets more exposure because he's on TV or she's on TV. But as well as that, there are, of course, there's the crew, there are producers, and there are fixers, local people who are working for us. A man called Abed Takush, who I worked with, and many other people worked with as well in Lebanon over quite a few years. He worked in the business for 25 years, until the day when he was working with me in South Lebanon in 2000. He was killed by the Israelis. And I still, when I arrive at Beirut airport and he's not there to greet me, you know, I can still feel it, and I still wish he was there.
I think slowly, and over a period of about 20 years, the journalistic brotherhood has come to realize that these people whom we call fixers, it's a funny term, but they make things happen which would not have happened without them. And their work has always been unpensionable. And when, of course, the crisis is over, even if they survive, well, it's thank you and goodbye. I think it's changing. I think awards such as this are very important.
You know how important they are. You know the risks they take to support our trade, to support us. You know how much we owe them. Please put folding money in one of the buckets you'll find around the premises tonight. There's also a way of paying through a gift aid option, and you can pick up an envelope or ask Vaughan or Pranvera or any other member of staff how you do that. Most of all, thanks very much to you for coming. Have a good time.